Rishi, thank you so much for talking to us today. You are in a space which is the biggest buzz, and everyone is talking about D2C and GOAT brands which you've launched has created already all the right news. You've raised significant amount of capital, and you're looking at growing local Indian brands. And tell us about GOAT and what got you to start it now.
Yeah, so it happens to be the right time. D2C brands are really going up. People have been, like I keep saying, that online and offline had been like two separate tracks running, parallel to each other. But because of the pandemic, a lot of people were pushed to shop online. And when they did that, they were also looking for new selection. Also, they decided to shop not only on the platforms, but also look at the brand sites. And we also saw that a lot of brands started getting a lot of sales on their own website. So this is a time where people are looking for more choice, shopping more online. And at the same time, when you look at the brands and some of the smaller brands with whom we are working more, you realize that a lot of them are not able to make the best of this opportunity. Partly because that they have various things that they're fighting, various fronts on which they're fighting, and they need help. Sometimes when they have the consumers, they don't have enough money to make inventory. Sometimes when they have inventory, they don't have the right, they don't have enough money or talent to get the right number of customers onto the site. So various issues with various startups in the D2C space. And yeah, I thought good opportunity for me to use some of my experience, both in the online and offline space and the fashion space. Also a good opportunity to learn, because when you sit with these founders, a lot of things that they know which you have never learned. So it gives me the opportunity to unlearn, relearn, and then grow as a professional.
Good that you're saying that you have a lot to learn, because I'm sure there are a lot of entrepreneurs and people and all of us who can learn from you, because you are one of the very few people in our country who has experience in scaling. With both Flipkart and Myntra, you've scaled and scaled digital brands and shown that to us. And that brings me to the question, Rishi, that how are you, your model has this thing that you'll be acquiring, right? Like all these D2C plus. Why did you choose that? Because kahin na kahin, for entrepreneurs, don't you think that would be a little bit of a, what should I say? How are you incentivizing them to have the skin in the game? And you can tell us, like, how?
Yeah, so very early in the game, Shraddha, even while we were raising money, the typical model was that let's follow Thrasio model, acquire 100%. And, I went out with our deck and said, no, we want to keep the founders and them really involved in the game. Second thing was that we want to have founders keep holding their stake for as long as they want, as long as they are excited about the brand, they own it and they are adding value. And the third thing was that the fact that founders are there in the game allows us to work with many brands. Otherwise, if you have to do everything on a brand, and especially in the fashion beauty segments where it's not just about multiplying what's already working, but also continue to innovate and bring out newness in the brand, you need people who are of the founders mentality to keep driving growth. Otherwise, you are stuck with 4 or 5 brands, which is taking away all your attention. To be a scalable model, you wanted this partnership between us as well as the founders. So therefore, we pitch ourselves as being co-founders with the founders. We say, okay, we want to work with you. And therefore, whatever we are paying is not acquisition money. It's really entering into the game at the 0 to 1 stage, right? And how we build it from 1 to 10 or 100 will create value for both sides, right? And therefore, we clearly articulate that which are the areas where we come in and the areas which the founders control. So therefore, it's not about that 51-49. It's clearly articulated that the founder has complete control on the creative elements, on revenue growth, digital marketing, content, all the things which makes the brand, stand out. Whereas all the boring stuff is things we take onto ourselves, because there everyone realizes that it takes away a lot of your energy, as well as scale matters. And therefore, 51-49 allows us to really not have few founders saying, oh, I love doing warehousing, so I will continue doing it. But you say, okay, these are things, you leave it to us so that we can get many different brands to come together and talk to the best guys in the business to help build a very, very scalable logistics, for example, or technology or data analytics. So all of these things, which that as a group, as a company, we can do much better rather than each guy doing on himself or herself. It makes sense to really, it's like a mall, right? You have a shop on the high street, you open the shop door, you look at security, you do the cleaning, you have back room, toilets, tailored to alter your garments, and then suddenly you move to a mall and everything's taken care of, including walk-in, and you just focus on your brand, your store, and your selling experience, right? Whereas all the other things kind of is done with the mall. So that's kind of the model across industries and across different aspects, where the hygiene, boring things are taken on by through economies of scale, while creative elements are left with really the brand owners.
Yeah, very interesting. And thanks for stating it very clearly, that what it would mean for all the interesting entrepreneurs out there who are building in D2C space, especially in fashion and beauty. But Rishi, it has been, some like Mamaearth, some of the brands, Sugar Cosmetics, and we've seen such successes in the last 2-3 years in this space, but many don't, right? Like many very interesting brands don't, and many do. And I want to ask you from your lens, because you've been in the trenches, you built scale. What are some of the elements you see works for D2C brands who, grow, and many who don't?
So I think the core which makes things work for any D2C brand, mid-scale or large scale, is a unique value proposition, right? Which is, there has to be something differentiated. There has to be a set of core customers who love you more than they love anything else in that same segment or category. And therefore you realize now the game is about scaling and getting more customers like that, right? So if I build a product with 100 very loyal customers, how do I get from 100 to 1000 and 1000 to 5000 and 10,000, right? Now, in this journey of scaling up, which could mean reaching out to more customers online or reaching to more cities, more pin codes, or more categories, there are many elements which could go wrong, right? And these are the elements where when you are very lucky, or when you have a good support system in terms of funding before you needed it, or the experience in multiple of these domains, your chances of failure are very low, and therefore you are playing at 90% chances of success, and therefore eventually you get there. But many a times you realize that the chances of success go down because many things which are not in your control. That means, suppose you went wrong on inventory planning, right? You never start a brand saying that I have to be excellent in inventory planning. You do not know whether the funds you are looking for, sometimes they just dry up during that period, right? Some of the backers just back out for whatever reasons, right? And suddenly you are all set to scale up, and then you're not getting people to fund you. Or something happens on your logistics side where something goes really wrong. You pick the wrong partners there, or something happened with therefore these elements which were not even as part of your calculation start to go wrong, and your chances of success go down, right? So I think therefore there would be brands which would grow 200 crores on their own. But to create brands at scale, I think you need to ensure that this failure rate for areas which are not within your control or not your core area of strength, they become kind of available to you as a platform. And that's why you say platform, and therefore you can quickly grow, right? So B2C brands have not had platforms. The marketplace brands have had platforms like Flipkart and Amazon, and D2C brand need to do everything right, from their own website to distribution to offline to money collection. And therefore this platform really supports people from in moving from the journey from 1 to 10.
Yeah, I was thinking this platform helps them become greatest of all time. So, Rishi, while of course this is the best time to start D2C, and platform like what you are creating will give such a huge impetus to interesting businesses in this segment. But also it's very difficult now because social media is inundated. There are so many choices. Suddenly you see proliferation. In fact, when I go to these marketplaces, there for any product, there are like hundreds, right? Which you can keep on looking at. What would you suggest from your lens? What would you suggest to D2C businesses, what should they do to stand apart? How do you build now?
Yeah. So in any category, as you come later, the cost of having the same success becomes higher. The other challenge is that if you had something differentiated and you were not able to lock in as a brand, it's very open to being copied, right? So like if you have seen in the beauty segment, a lot of people started off with one beauty product, which was their differentiator. And suddenly the guys with the bigger brands would suddenly have that in the range, and consumers will very quickly switch saying that, oh, this I get in other brands as well, right? So I think the important thing for brands which have a proposition which they believe is unique, they have to move from product to being a brand, right? They need to be, the story needs to be told. They have to move forward from just spending on performance marketing to communicating what their brand stands for. And that means that you will have to spend ahead of time, which means you cannot wait for, the money that you make every year to start deploying. You will need the help either of VCs backing you because you have a strong proposition which can scale, or the platforms which will help you not spend a lot of money on salaries, overheads, etc., but bring you expertise at fraction of a cost and also give you the money that you need to grow. So I think locking in your proposition, getting into the consumer's mind, saying that, okay, you stand for this is very critical. Otherwise, very easy for people to get copied or others to get inspired by what you have done well, and then you get left behind. So I keep telling this to brands is that if you have been with a proposition for quite some time and not scaling now, then the chances of scaling a year later might be much more difficult because somebody might be using that same feature in their product and you are kind of not even known for that.
Yeah, and especially in fashion and beauty, right? Because novelty is a huge thing that. So, Rishi, you come from the marketplace world, and of course, you come from the largest marketplace, homegrown marketplace that India saw. But when it comes to D2C brands, and I've spoken to a lot of them, there's a perpetual question, right? Because you end up giving 25, 35, and sometimes 45% of what you make to the marketplaces. And there is this thing about loyalty, like, we talked about locking in the users. So there is now this whole debate that how do you lock in your own users and have a moat around your brand, or you are, because of course, marketplaces have built all these brands. What do you think? Where do you think is the future?
Yeah, marketplaces, like if I use a offline analogy, right? Marketplaces are like multi-brand outlets, and your own site is like standalone stores, right? So if you are distributed through multi-brand outlets, the cost is lower for you, and therefore you can have some money at the end of the day. Whereas if you take the risk and set up an EBO, you have to ensure that you're paying the rent, you are getting customers to walk in, etc. But the challenge always is that in multi-brand environment, customers can switch very fast, right? So you need both. If you are well entrenched into the marketplace world, especially in fashion and beauty, and you are playing the game of pricing, discounting, and not spending enough, like marketplaces have these features like brand ads, etc., which typically get used by large brands, but upcoming sellers are putting most of their money in listing ads so that their ranking can go up, or putting money in discounting, which means that you get a lot of sales in the short term, but your brand doesn't get built, right? So the right balance between spending on sales as well as spending on brand building is critical in any, whether it's an offline world or an online world. And that's where I think the balance is very important. If you have built a strong brand on D2C side, easier for you to get into marketplaces and really start expanding your distribution. But the reverse is where you need to really correct the discounts that you have been giving, or you have been building a price strategy where you kind of increase the price and there is higher discounting, which makes the customer convert faster. So those are things that you need to correct when you come to a D2C world. So interesting play of both. And then there is the offline opportunity for D2C brands. Why should they just be restricted to online? There's an opportunity to be seen in the right malls, to be seen in the right retail outlets, which can give them extra visibility. So brands need to ensure that they have a right balance of availability across on-site marketplaces as well as offline to grow and be ahead of competition in terms of brand building and sales.
Yeah, recently, not recently, since last 1 year, there's this new word been listening to, hearing to, blended. So what you're saying is that blended experience hona chahiye, and it online marketplace, your own brands and your own stores, and of course offline. Rishi, now we were talking about branded place. So I want to ask you, you are a brand yourself, and the attention that you got with the startup that you've started with Good. How did you get all these amazing investors to come and back you? Of course, you have a very good word of mouth about you in the market, but tell us what got them to sign the check.
Right place, right time, I suppose. But
No,
yeah,
you have to tell more.
yeah. So I think it seems everything has fallen into place very quickly. But when I started off with this idea, I had no clue that there is some business called Thrasio and Accelerator. It really came from meeting a lot of startup founders and say, okay, if I work with 5 or 7 brands, then I can create at least some scale where they can gain from collective backend. So that's where it started. And since it's resonated with a lot of the brand owners that we spoke to, quickly we were able to come with the structure where we said, yes, this can work, right? And this can work in fashion, it can work in beauty, and it can work in home and kitchen. So that way it fell, and they fell in place quite quickly. And even though it's quite different from the Accelerator model or the Thrasio model that's going on globally, because they do not focus on fashion, but so therefore it started. We started connecting with a lot of VCs. It took us our own share of meeting multiple people, many rejections, etc. And therefore, we went through those cycles as well. But yeah, finally, when it started falling into place, it happened quickly. And then we moved from one stage to the next one.
It's very reassuring that you say that you also faced rejection. It's like soothing and calming for a lot of us who do experience rejection. So yeah, okay. When it comes to the category that you are operating in and you are going to be playing in, again, the brand becomes very, very critical. And India, we say that, India is value conscious, price conscious, or India, jo Naya India is also brand conscious. And then you have been with Calvin Klein, which is very, very brand conscious brand. And then you've been with Myntra and Flipkart. Are you seeing the shift in the country when it comes to especially the fashion and beauty space, where you think that we as consumers are becoming very more brand conscious than we were, or do you think it's still very value driven segment?
Yeah, so I go back about 4-5 years, right? My early days in Flipkart, and some of the debates used to be that should we use the word trend, right, in Flipkart? Flipkart is supposed to be like value, and therefore trends or fashion is something that should not be used. And I used to shout at the top of my voice saying that, hey, whether you buy a garment for 500 or you buy for 50,000, right? You want to look fashionable, right? Fashionable is a universal concept, right?
Yes.
Similarly, value is also a universal concept. Even if you're spending a lot of money, you would want to seek value. So what we started doing was, one of the interesting things we came up in Flipkart was saying that, okay, our customer has a pocket, a size of say 500 for a product, say a kurti. Now, rather than saying that we take 500 to 450 or 430, because then there is a certain cost of delivery, etc., and your products might actually go down. How can we keep 400 or 500 the same and increase the value, right? Which means that what are the elements customers are looking for, right? And if you today go and click on the Flipkart fashion page, many people are surprised when I show them that there's not even a single discount call out. If you go to the women's section, we talk about, now they know that Flipkart is a place where the prices are sharp. It has taken care of cost of doing business, so therefore you will not be paying extra. Now the whole trick is how to show more value. So you will see the latest trends being put out, the latest celebrities being shown. We had tie-ups with GQ and Vogue to present their views on what fashion could be, but the price still remains 500, right? So the customer gets more value, and therefore brand is nothing but creating more value for the customer in terms of being consistent, or in terms of addressing their need for looking good, looking fashionable. And it's not necessarily linked to price point or increasing price or increasing discount, because those are short-term things, and a brand cannot do these ups and downs, otherwise you lose the consistency. So So my learning in my shift from premium and bridge to luxury brands onto a Flipkart where we were selling right from 200-300 rupee items to 2 lakh rupee watches was to really see what is universal and how can you apply similar thought process or similar logic across various price segments and yet taking care of the need of that customer. And that's where we had a lot of success, that we connected with the customer of tier 2, tier 3, connected with women's customer, and that gave consistent growth to Flipkart Fashion, which then went on to become the #1 player in fashion very quickly, right? So that's something which is my learning. And therefore today when we speak to brands, we come across brands which are small and big, we come across brands which are sharply priced and premium. So there are some universal truths, and you cannot say that, okay, I only operate here. That's the chain that I went through. And those are some of the things we apply when we see a brand and say, okay, what value can we add? Like, for example, if it's a very sharply priced brand with very low margin, very low cost of operating, and yet they're making money, we tell ourselves that if we get in with this brand, will we add any value? If not, then we'll just be, making them corporatized and adding cost to them, right? So it's important to really know that where is it that you can, it's not just about acquiring and looking good that I have a good portfolio, but really add value.
But I think I want to call out, this is a very important thing that you said, that brand consciousness, everyone wants to be most fashionable, look the best, and value consciousness is also universal. And getting both right, that in both the vectors, getting it right is when you have a recipe for scale. Yeah. Is it right to call you the pandemic induced startup, or did you start before the pandemic started?
No, I started much later actually. Pandemic started last year. I just started 3 months back, 3-4 months back. But yeah, there comes a stage in your life where you have closures in terms of what you want to achieve in the corporate world. Some people start off startups very early. I'm one of the late startup guys, right? But I think I have had those closures in my mind in terms of having seen various aspects of corporate life. And I said, okay, now I don't yearn for those things. It's doing something where I can give back, help a lot of budding startups is something that really drives me, and creating something is also something that drives me. So therefore, it's more induced by those stages of my career. Happens to be pandemic, and therefore some of the opportunities I've got bigger, because like I said, while the opportunity of online is growing, some of the brands are struggling, and therefore you find that it's a good time to help these brands and therefore get them to participate in the D2C growth.
Rishi, we're interviewing you in the series called Money Matters. So I have to ask you this question: what has money meant to you personally?
An outcome of what you put in, long time back. So one of my stints I did early in my career was when I started my job, I was working for Aditya Birla Group. So I did a couple of months with the Birla Mutual Fund. So some of those concepts really stayed with me. And I used to always tell myself, is my money growing? Are you looking at it? Are you investing well? And one fine day, somebody told me, or I read somewhere, I think it said that the biggest investment you can do is do well in your career, right? Because that trumps anything else. So rather than worrying about whatever little saving you have, trying to get the maximum output for that, if you're growing in your career, you will get much higher returns. So I said, okay, till I retire, hang up my boots, let's push myself to do better and better in my career. And the outcome of that has been much more rewarding in terms of money. But yeah, it's not been the input, it's more been the output of the input that I've put in my work.
If you have to, as of today, look back at all the stints that you've done before GOAT and now this, and then no journey is straight journey. No, there is an arc. What would you say are 1 or 2 things that stays with you, that changed you while you were working, and then something that defines a lot of who you are today as an entrepreneur in this venture?
I think one of the big things that have defined my various stints have been that never been satisfied with what I've achieved, right? So it's always that desire to do a little more, and wherever, and I've spent long stints in every job, right? And I would not want to give the message to youngsters that, if you are unhappy, just change, right? So like a book I read, it said, too much grit is bad, right? Too much grit is bad. So it's not that you keep doing it and you are not finding the output, or you're not getting the environment for you to to get better or do better, that's the time you think, okay, let me try something different. And that different thing should really challenge me, right? So every time I've reached that stage, I've changed, moved to a career option, which has really made me insecure. No clarity whether I can use what I had learned till then in the new environment. Like when I left the comforts of offline companies to go into Flipkart, Flipkart was in a hugely changing space, and fashion was something that was not doing really well in Flipkart. The early days where books and general merchandise and mobile electronics used to do well, but really put myself to say, okay, I need to survive here and try to do things differently. Otherwise, it will be like another category, another stint, and I'll go back to the offline world, right? So everything, similarly, entrepreneurship, right? Giving the comfort of big titles, already running business with comfort of money being available. I said, okay, let me jump into this. And I was really clear in my mind that even if I do not get the funding, I will put a few, some money from my side and really build this up, whatever it takes, right? So that pushing yourself to be in that uncomfortable zone with the desire to really make a success out of it has been very, very important in my path. And a lot of people out there have been in a job for some time and they're feeling that the growth is not there. They're not able to really move to the next level for whatever situation that they might be in. And I also feel that in this venture, I should be able to create opportunities for those people, right? So there are many times when we acquire a brand and the founder does not continue for whatever reason. He or she may have, might have just got bored of that or might want to move on in life. So I would like to invite a lot of people who would want to do entrepreneurship, but always feel that how can I start from 0 to 1? So we would have ready 1 to 10 opportunities where they can come in, give them good stock options to run that brand as a founder. So that's another way of saying that when I was 30, 35, if I had this kind of an opportunity, I would have jumped in and say, okay, this is something which is new entrepreneurship and I have a platform to build it on. So that's what has defined me. And I would like to create some of those scenarios for people who are wanting to break out and do something which is much more independent. It's my way of saying, okay, let me create an environment which is conducive for such people.
Wow, that's a very inspiring and very authentic and inspiring answer. Thank you so much. And we wish Goat Brand Labs. That's the name, right? Goat Brand Labs. Or do you say GOAT? Because it's G.
Yeah.
It has the full stops. So how do you pronounce this?
So Goat Brand Labs because it has greatest of all time built into it. But then the logo is a goat, a young goat, looking up with hope, wanting to climb tall mountains and really make it up there, and yet not very aggressive, wise animal, and that's what defines us. So yeah, you can call it Goat Brand Labs.
Yeah, so all the very best to you and Goat Brand Labs, and to all the entrepreneurs who will come in the fold and who will have the opportunity to create big, amazing brands out of our country. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.